You've heard of the DS3, right? Well, what about the DS3 Crossback? Perhaps not. Before I say or do anything else, please make sure you like this video, make sure you comment on it, and make sure you subscribe. And click that little bell icon so you get a notification when we upload a new video. In fact, don't just click it, just smash it. Full force, smash it. Don't break your computer, but just really go for it. This is the DS3 Crossback, and it's the second all-new car to join the modern DS range. Now, why do I say modern DS range? Well, because the DS name is old. The original DS, the Citroën DS, was introduced in 1955. But this is a very different car. That was a very svelte, very luxurious, comfortable four-door saloon. This, on the other hand, is a compact crossover. And it's not just different to the original DS, but it's different to the last car to carry the DS3 badge. The DS3 was the first car to come from the relaunched, reborn, more independent DS brand. It was a hatchback, a really cute, fun little hatchback that people just went absolutely nuts for. So why is this an SUV? Well, it's because DS as a company doesn't really believe that hatchbacks are the way to go when you want to go after luxury and premium. That's why you've got the DS7 Crossback and now this, the DS3 Crossback. A small hatch just wouldn't really work. The DS3 Crossback is longer, wider, taller, heavier, and has a longer wheelbase than the old DS3 hatch. As you can appreciate then, it looks very, very different. And to be honest, I'm not entirely sure that it's got that same kind of coolness or fun factor that the old DS3 hatch had. Then again, this car has details that the old DS3 hatch never had, never could have. It doesn't just feel like a rebadged Citroën. Like the door handles that sit flush with the doors until you unlock the car and then they pop out, and then when you start driving, they pop away again. The diamond-shaped air vents in the doors. The cool centre console with these really lovely little metal buttons. The 10-inch central touchscreen and this digital instrument cluster. The only common feature? That shark fin on the rear window. Engines? Well, there's the E-Tense, the fully electric version, and then you've got the more traditional petrols and diesels. Diesels? Well, there's one. It's a 1.5 litre turbo diesel with 100 brake horsepower. Petrols? Well, there's also just one. It's a 1.2 litre 3-cylinder turbo, but it comes with 3 different power outputs. 99 brake horsepower, 129 brake horsepower, or 152 brake horsepower. This car is the mid-range petrol, so it's got 129 brake horsepower, 170 pounds-feet of torque, and you'll get about 42 miles to the gallon. 0 to 62 miles an hour takes 9.2 seconds, and the top speed is 124 miles an hour. Performance is average then, but actually this engine is really, really smooth and really, really quiet. Some 3-cylinder engines have been a bit gruff, not very smooth, but this is actually very smooth and very quiet. When you put your foot down, it's still very quiet, but actually makes quite a nice kind of distant little rumble. I like 3 cylinders. The gearbox is an 8-speed automatic, and you get the same gearbox across the whole DS3 Crossback range. That is, unless you go for the entry-level petrol or diesel, in which case you get a 6-speed manual. There isn't really much more to tell you about the gearbox, to be honest, because it is exactly the same gearbox that you'll find in the DS7 Crossback and every other Citroën and Peugeot automatic. However, for the sake of covering it, it is a very smooth gearbox, and of course you've got paddles behind the steering wheel so you can change gear manually. Sometimes it takes a bit of time for the gearbox to respond. It's not always instant to kick down, so the throttle response just feels a little bit slow, but it isn't really the end of the world. I mean, what do you expect? It's a DS3 Crossback. As for the suspension, well, you don't get the clever suspension that you get on the DS7 Crossback, where it uses cameras to look at the road ahead and adjust the suspension accordingly before you get to a bump. And I think that's a good thing, because that system doesn't really work for me. It just made the car far too wallowy and just felt a bit loose and awkward. This, it's traditional springs and dampers. It's quite softly sprung, there's a fair bit of suspension travel, but there isn't too much roll, and you've got quite thick sidewall tyres as well, so that adds another layer of comfort. However, I do think it struggles when you hit a couple of bumps in quite quick succession. The suspension is still dealing with that travel from the first bump, and if you hit a second one, it kind of just feels a little bit awkward, like it doesn't really know what to do. You can feel the weight kind of moving around a little bit. Similarly, when you accelerate, if you go over a bump, the wheels, you can feel them bouncing a little bit. They're just not as well controlled as I would like them to be. The steering isn't very communicative, as you'd probably expect, and it's relatively light, but there aren't any kind of awkward dead spots where the steering just isn't responding to what you're asking it to do. It feels quite trustworthy. And like so many other cars, there is, of course, a drive mode button down here on the centre console. So you've got Eco, Normal and Sport, and it changes the throttle response, the response of the gearbox, and also the steering weight. I think it's fine left alone in Normal, but in Sport, actually, the weight doesn't feel too unnatural. It's okay. But like I said, it's still not a very communicative steering system, so yeah, don't really know what's happening. Prices start at £22,120 and they rise all the way to just under £40,000 if you go for the top of the range E-Tense all-electric version. This is a Prestige, so it's just above the midpoint in the range, and it's £28,520. Although this particular car is just over £29,000 because the red paint, the metallic paint, is an option. All in all, does this feel like a luxury product? Something a bit plusher than your average compact crossover? Well, yes, it does, but I don't know if luxury is quite the right word. I think unique is probably better. Does it feel unique? Absolutely. To sit in here, it feels very different to other crossovers, more bespoke. To buy one of these, you're setting yourself apart. That's a huge positive. So many other crossovers just kind of, they're all starting to blend into one a little bit. And compared to the old DS3, this is a very different world. It's a much more convincing, unique product. The quality is much improved. The driving position is better. It's quieter, and you've got loads more technology, etc., etc. The one big thing I still worry about, though, is appeal. The old DS3 had something really special, and I'm not quite sure if this has got that. What do you think of the DS3 Crossback? Do you look at it as a refined luxury product? Do you think it still has the same appeal as the old DS3? Or do you think DS should have stuck with the DS3 as it was? They should have stuck with a hatch. Let me know in the comments below.